Hi everyone, this is Arkady Frekhtman. I'm a New York City personal injury trial attorney. And today I want to tell you the story of how our firm settled two cases in 2 days for $12 million. This was May 6th and May 7th of this year, and we had back-to-back mediations. One case was a case where somebody was riding a scooter, crossing a road, and a truck hit them. Another case was a construction worker who was carrying a heavy 300-pound pipe, and he tripped and fell due to some debris while they were building a hotel at the airport. So both were serious injuries, both were serious cases. So how did we do it and what happened? So the first case, the one with the construction worker, what happened there was he was just walking during the construction of the TWA hotel at JFK Airport. And he tripped and fell due to like some debris, and basically they can't have debris in a passageway. And there are a lot of laws that protect construction workers, so he was protected. So what happened was we had a mediation previously, but there was never really any offer on the case. And he had a prior attorney before, and there never really was any substantial offer. And what we did was we showed them all of the different elements of damages, including past pain and suffering from the date of this incident up until the date of trial, which was coming up soon. Future pain and suffering, because he's still a young guy, would have been huge. And then also past lost wages, future lost wages, and future medical costs. So we had all of the experts and everything was lined up. And even if you looked at each category in a conservative way, when you added it all up, it was going to be a big number. So his injuries were, he had a cervical fusion in the neck at C5, C6. He had a lumbar fusion at L5, S1. He also needed a spinal cord stimulator. And he had a left shoulder surgery, a right knee surgery. These are arthroscopies. And he also had a left shoulder rotator cuff debridement. And so he needed a cane sometimes to walk. He had the left foot drag. He had pretty serious injuries, you know. And basically the economic damages, just the lost wages, when you added it all up, they totaled future lost income was over $5 million. So he had a lot of future lost income. And then when you looked at the human story, he had a really compelling human story because he's somebody who was born in the Dominican Republic and his mom passed away and he was kind of passed from family member to family member, and then he came to America and he tried to, you know, do his best. He went to a tough high school, but he succeeded, and then he went to the aviation college. And at one point, he only had $2 to his name, and he was in a park by himself somewhere in the Bronx on Christmas Eve, and all he had was $2, so he got like a little slice of cake and a juice, and that's kind of like all he had. But then he pulled himself up through the construction business, and he joined a local union, and he was doing really well, and he was making $109,000 a year, and he was on the verge of buying his first home. He had his fiance, he had children, actually 5 children. So he was doing really, really well before this incident happened. And what the defendants were doing, you know, they started off, first of all, they didn't have any offer. Then they started off with $1 million, and they were really harping on two things. Number one, they were saying, well, he had this past incident in 2010, which was about 6 or 7 years before this one, the one that we're suing for. So yeah, they basically were saying that. They were saying that, you know, it's all from that. And it's kind of like a ridiculous argument because, first of all, there weren't any medical records from that incident in 2010. It was just a little fender bender. He wasn't really out of work. He did get some medical care, but the medical care was like from March of 2010 and it ended in April. It was just a few weeks. And the entire case, I think, settled for like $2,000. He had like no injury. He didn't even get an MRI, I don't believe. There was like no proof of anything. And yet they were still saying, no, it's all from that. So what I was going to do if the case had gone to trial was show them a timeline and be like, look, he had this incident, he had like a few days of treatment, right? Little fender bender. Then you have like 7 years of no treatment. He's working, he's doing like lifting 300-pound, weights at work, doing everything, right? Living his best life. And then all of a sudden this happens, the fall, and that's when he starts getting all the treatment. If you look at the timeline, going to the hospital, start needing injections, needing physical therapy, needing surgeries. So how can you say that it's from this little thing, right? And then the second thing that they were really harping on was when he was asked about the 2010 incident in a workers' compensation hearing, he didn't remember it. So they were trying to say that, oh, that's not just a not remembering, that's like kind of a fraud. He's trying to conceal it. But I explained, look at his human story. If you look at his human story, first of all, he's from the Dominican Republic. We're in the Bronx for trial. He's a really likable guy. He's got like friends, people who are going to come to court, talk about him. At the end of the day, I think I actually said this at the mediation. I just said, at the end of the day, he's going to look to this jury like Aaron Judge of the Yankees or something. They're going to love this guy. He's like, actually, he was 6'6", the client, and he's like a great guy. Like, how are you going to say just because he didn't remember one thing in 2010? It was a nothing. It was like a little nothing burger. It was like a little fender bender for a few weeks of treatment. So I kind of harped on that. I explained to them. So then they started coming up, and then and like I said, we had all of the different elements of damages. We had all of the arguments, and basically it ended up settling for a total of $5 million. So it was a pretty good settlement. He was happy with that. He wanted it done, and it's guaranteed money that he's going to receive, as opposed to going to trial, getting a verdict. Even if the verdict was higher, like 20 million, like from my other videos, what they could do is appeal, and then the appeal takes 2-3 years, and then the appellate division might cut it down and say 20 is too high, take 5 or 6, and if you don't like that, then do the trial all over again. But each time you do a trial like this, just because of all the doctors, all the economists, all the experts, life care planners, you're going to spend maybe like $100,000, plus you're going to spend like 4 or 5 weeks on trial. So the $5 million wasn't bad. So that was settled. And then the other case was a case where, like I was saying earlier, it was somebody on a scooter just going across an intersection. But the whole area was like under construction. So there wasn't really like a clear crosswalk. It happened out on Long Island. And a truck, like a box truck, was just turning and ran them over. So what they were saying, they were mostly arguing liability. They were saying that, the box truck was already turning, there was nobody there, and then this guy on a scooter going at fast speed, first of all, riding a scooter like on a sidewalk, which was illegal, and then just kind of like went right into the truck. And we said, look, that's not what happened. Like, he was in, the crosswalk is still there, even though you don't have it painted because it's under construction. Any area between the curb and then the next curb is a crosswalk where people cross, and there's like a light, and it's green for the truck, it's green for him, he's going. The truck just didn't see him, failing to see what there is to be seen. So we had arguments both ways, but in a mediation, they don't really listen too much. Like, it's not like a jury where you have to be persuasive or you have to give an opening statement. It's more like, look, let's cut to the chase. Are we going to settle this or not? And so in that case, they made us an offer of 1.5 million before we even walked in. And then we talked, and then they were like slow to come up. And we were really trying to get this client a lot because he had multiple surgeries, many surgeries, a lot of different injuries, really serious, serious accident, serious injury. He's better now. He's able to go back to do some type of work, but some of these injuries are going to be like lifelong. And he's also a young guy, like I think 30, 37 or something like that. So, so the way we broke it down the same, we said, look, past pain and suffering has got to be a few million. Future is going to be a lot. And then you have like he didn't really have economic loss. He didn't have lost wages. We waived that, but he did have future medical costs, and those were going to be big. So we showed all the different elements. But like I said, they were mostly arguing liability, and they were really slow to come up. But in the end, they were already up to, I think it was like 5.5 million, then 6.5 million. And then finally, when they got to 7 million, the client wanted it because this was a case that was just kind of like starting, meaning in the litigation phase, we had the deposition of the plaintiff. We had some information about the truck driver. We had some witnesses, witness statements, things like that, some videos from the police body cam. But we never even took the deposition of the truck driver. That was going to happen after the mediation. And so we told the client, look, we think if you wait a little bit, we have a good chance to get you much more. But he really wanted it just done and over with, and it was a total of 7. So 5 plus 7, 12 million in 2 days on these 2 cases. And let me just go through a little bit of what happened and how we ended up getting it. Like, what was the what were the arguments that the other side made, basically like how did this all happen? So both cases, what we did was we sent a letter, like a settlement opportunity letter, telling them, look, here's the amount that we'll accept. If not, then this amount is going to be like a train that leaves the station, and it's going to be much more later on. So they kind of knew that, right? So that was already like framed. So both cases we did that. The other thing was that we also looked at liability, and we kind of made liability as strong as possible. Like for example, in the construction case, there was already a motion for summary judgment which was granted on liability. So that we had summary judgment, meaning the only issue was damages, right? And they were saying we're going to appeal the summary judgment, the appellate division may reverse it, but the trial was going to happen in a few months. It was unlikely it was going to get reversed, and there was not really any reason for it to be reversed because that's the law. That construction worker like that, debris in a passageway, it's a 241-6 case, so we had that. And then in the other case, they were basically saying, like I said before, about him being the cause of the accident, being at fault. In fact, I think they told the judge, I even wrote it down, they said he's unequivocally at fault. But really, they didn't have any actual argument for that. They were just saying, oh, because he's on an electric scooter, but it was the type of scooter that just goes like 5 miles an hour or less. They were saying he's not paying attention, he's on a crosswalk. But none of that matters because, like they're saying he's on the sidewalk and it's illegal to ride on the sidewalk. But the accident didn't happen on the sidewalk. He was on the sidewalk before, just like he might have been at home having coffee an hour before, but what difference does it make, right? It's where he was when the crash happened, and he was in the crosswalk, and that's when the truck should have seen him, and the truck is high up, right? He's a professional driver. He's got to scan the entire intersection. He can't just turn, and it doesn't matter, right? If it's a scooter going 4 miles an hour, if it's a pedestrian walking, he's got to see what there is to be seen. He's got to stop. So that's what we argued on the other case. So I think liability is really, really key. You have to, make sure you have all the arguments for liability. And then the other part of it that was important was the human story, because a lot of these insurance adjusters, mediators, they just see the files as, pieces of paper, names blur, numbers blur. So, but who is this person? What is happening to them, right? And like in the construction case, he basically said, I used to be the man of the house, and now my partner has to help me put on my socks, right? Everything's changed. Like in his own building, people start like making fun of him, saying, hey, that's the limping guy. And he doesn't want to be known as the limping guy. He's a young guy, and but it is what it is. And in the other case, when he wanted to propose to his fiancée in the truck case, he couldn't get down on one knee because he was so injured, right? So he couldn't do that when he wanted to propose. So things like that. So we kind of harped on that, and we showed that in our letters, but as well as in the mediation. And then the other thing is, we had experts. We had treating doctors, we had life care planners, we had economists. So that's really, really key, because when you have like line items and you say like this is worth millions of dollars and this is why, we have the evidence to back it up, that's what gets these insurance companies to then put real money on the case. Like a treating doctor that documents every future procedure the client will need over a lifetime, life care planner that prices each procedure, each surgery, each medication, and then tells you year by year, and then the economist who then projects those numbers across the client's remaining life expectancy and adjusts for inflation and converts that to a present value. So like in the construction case, the economist's future medical care alone was 2.69 million, right? And the future lost earnings, when you factor in just the earnings plus everything else, all the benefits, it was like 10 million. So we had a lot of ammunition. So yeah. And then the other thing is that you have to be strong at a certain point. If you have to say, if this is where you are, we should just stop wasting each other's time, and you have to mean it, right? Because like in the pedestrian case, the carrier opened at only 1.5 million, and then they moved to 1.75. So at that point, we were at like 20 million, and we moved down to like 19.5. But like we were saying, look, at this pace, we're just wasting each other's time if that's how it's going to go. If you came here just to go from 1.5 to 1.75, let's just end the mediation, right? But then they started talking, and they started coming up, and then, it got to the 7 million point. But like I said, that's really important because you have to feel them out and see what they're doing. And a lot of the time, cases go to mediation and they don't settle because the insurance company is not going to come up to where you need to be. Basically, that's how we ended up there. So we ended up getting 5 and 7, 12 total for these two cases. And that was like a quintupling of the offers, because even maybe more, because I think, like I said, the truck case was 1.5, the other case was, I think, under 1. So it was a total of about like 2, and we ended up getting like 7. So yeah, we did pretty well with it. The other thing is, really knowing your case and understanding like what it's about and how to frame it, but also how to explain what it's truly worth, all the different categories of damages, why it's bigger than what they say it is. Because sometimes these insurance companies, they make these arguments, and and sometimes the mediator, the judge, it sounds to you as a plaintiff's attorney like they're siding with the insurance company. But you have to just kind of like stick to your guns and say, look, that's just not true, and explain to them why. Because like one of the things they were saying in one of the cases, I think in the scooter case, was, oh, people don't like scooters, people don't like motorcyclists and bicyclists, so the jury is just gonna like find them like 100% liable because people don't like they're zipping on scooters. But okay, maybe somebody's zipping on a scooter somewhere, but not this client on the date of this incident, right? So you have to know what happened and just stick firm, and don't let these generalities and these general statements, take you away from kind of like keep your eyes on the prize, be focused, and don't let them try to like steer you off course. So that's really key. So I hope this was helpful. We also do deeper dives on each case and go through everything, but I wanted to do just a general overview video of how we got this done. So please like and subscribe to our channel. Let us know what questions you have. We are here for you. Our goal is helping serious injury victims and families, and let us know if we could help you.